Hey everybody, welcome to Drive-Thru Review 270. Today we're going to talk about Galactic Strike Force. This is a game from Greater Than Games, who you probably know from Sentinels of the Multiverse, which is a game that came out, I think, 2 or 3 years ago, and it's had like 4 expansions or something, which is kind of a superhero card game. Now this is from the same designer, same publisher, same artist, and it very much feels sort of like a Sentinels 2.0 style of game. A lot of the mechanics and different things are very Sentinels, ish. You can totally see sort of the lineage or sort of the design evolution, probably. It's not like Sentinels, really, but you can definitely see it. So it's definitely not like, oh, I'm just playing Sentinels again. There's a lot different things happening. So the idea is that there's some big villain that is sort of trying to take over the galaxy, and then each of the players kind of represents a different ship. And so you're going to be flying in these different sectors, doing different things, getting new technology for your ship, and fighting off different kind of little minion ships, and trying to sort of combat some mission cards that are going to come out, and then also eventually either trying to A, wipe out all the ships, and then you'll win, or if the big bad ship comes out, sort of the boss, and then you kill them, then you win. Now there is an elite mode where you have to do both, and I'll talk about that more later. So let's jump in and see how the game works, and I'll come back and tell you what I think. So I'll do a brief kind of mini unboxing here to kind of show you all the pieces that are going to come in the game. So go ahead and take this off here. You get the training manual, pretty straightforward, very kind of large typeface, good examples and things throughout the rule book. So that's a good little thing. And you've also got the sort of the cheat sheet of the phases of the game, some of the different things that will happen, some of the iconography and things, little reminders there, so you can just leave that face up like that. And then you have the compartments here. So here we have all the cards in the game, and kind enough to come with these little dividers here. It tells you also the makeup of what's in each of the different decks. Now the green ones here are the ship decks. So this is what the player will start with. Each of these has 8 cards in it. And you can see a couple different things. Some of these are tech that you're going to install into your ship. Some of them will be boosts here. These will be kind of like action cards that you'll play. And then they're also going to generate money for you during a buy phase or requisition phase. And so there's a couple other different things there. So each ship, here's the Basilios deck, is going to have its own little deck there. So you've got, I think, 9 ships that you can choose from, which is quite a bit. And then you have the cards for your villains here, and these are in red. So if we take a look here, I'll take the back one here. And so this, you're going to have 2 decks. You're going to have missions cards and ship cards. So the mission cards will have a variety of text and things on there, different things that's going to happen. Then you also have a deck of ship cards there. And you can see sort of the stats of the ship, plus some other special abilities, a little picture of the pilot and stuff like that. So you have 5 different villains, each with their own mission and ship deck. And then finally you have here these station cards, which are very interesting. You have a lot of these 2 are upside down, sort of. So you have sort of a bad side on this side here, an opposition side. And then on the other side you have sort of the strike force side. These are the cards you want to get and acquire into your deck. So these are kind of dual purpose here. You basically use about half of them in a game, and then but you may sometimes only see the strike force side of it, and you maybe not ever really deal with the opposition side of it, which could be an effect for the bad guys or a ship that comes out for the bad guys, or vice versa. So even though you use half of it in the game, you probably only look at half of that. So there's a lot of variety, and the game play is going to be somewhat dependent on this, and I don't want to oversell that, but this is going to add a little bit of variety to each of the different setups involved. And we also have a bunch of other stuff in here, which I'll talk about here. You have the different sectors. I'll set some of these up. And then you'll have the different cards for the villain ships as well as the good guy ships in here. And then tons and tons of these different tokens to help track different modifications to, in this case, your attack value, your defensive value. And then you also have here, which I put here to kind of keep the card steady, these different standees here, which I'll show you. You've got standees for the bad ships and the good ships. So you can see there's some room for expansion here with the cards for sure. I mean, it only takes about half of that box there, and there's plenty of room in there. There also are some miniatures that are available, which I don't have here, but for example, this is the Omega ship here. These are pretty cool. They have, different artwork and everything, and they're pretty indicative and easy to kind of tell things apart. So these are pretty nice. But the models also that I've seen pictures of online are also very unique. They're not very generic. So each ship is going to have a really different look to it, and also the way they play based on the decks is also going to be very different. So here I just quickly want to show you some of the artwork on the player ship cards. Each player is going to get a ship card, and they're also going to get a deck to go with it, and then also, like I said, a little token to go with it. So here we've got the Conclave of Niphon. You can see a couple different things here. Here's the starting attack value, starting defensive value. Each ship has what's called a secondary engage bonus. I'll explain what secondary engage is. And then also, if a ship is ever sort of knocked out or what's called grounded in a game, you can see you flip it over to grounded side, and then you'll take your ship marker, and then you basically get one kind of thing that you can do. Similar to Sentinels, when your guy gets KO'd, you have some ability that you can do. You're not completely knocked out of the game. So here we've got the Grey Hammer, then we've got the Karachar's Claw, Merit's Folly. So I really like the artwork on the ships and the different characters and things, and that's one of the things that is a little bit too bad about some of the games. So if we zoom out here, you can see the artwork on some of the cards, but that's kind of a close-up view. If we zoom out here, this is kind of the game it's set up. You can see you kind of get lost in some of that. So I kind of wish some of the art was bigger, and also the font was a little bit bigger on some of these cards here, because the font is, I've got that pretty close. It's still kind of small. So I do kind of wish everything was sort of just scaled a little bit better, because as you can kind of look and see there, if we zoom in on a couple of these, the art is pretty nice on some of this stuff. So anyway, I feel like it's missing on the game. So let's zoom back to the ship. Here's some more good art here. And then this is a cool little thing. And so the three ships, I'm going to just set up a 3-player game here. Like, for example, we have the Bajral Sphere here. And so here's the token. The art on those is also nice. So you'll start with this guy on top here, and then you can see he actually has 0 attack and 5 defense. So you get a whole mess of markers and tokens over there, and they even come with zeros, because what you do is when a new ship comes into play or something, you're going to grab all those tokens there, and then you're going to put them here down on the ship. So we'll just put these on here to start. And the reason you put the 0 is nice because, let's say his defense got reduced to 0. We're not going to get confused, because we'll have a 0 defensive token to put on there, and we don't think it's 5, because there's going to be a lot of abilities that are manipulating stats, not unlike Sentinels in the Multiverse, and so you want to have a good indication of what's what. Okay, so here's how the game might look at setup. Now this is for a 3-player game. So depending on the number of players, you can deal out basically twice as many ship cards. And these are these red cards here we can see on the opposition side. You're always going to have 3 sectors in play, and you can kind of just pick and choose those. Each of the sectors does have a variety of abilities and things like that. We can see this one here. Whenever a ship enters this sector, remove a defense from it. So all of these have different abilities. They're not super game changing, which is kind of nice if you think of the environments in Sentinels Multiverse. Then some of those can be really nasty. Some of these, they will come into play and they'll have some consideration there, but they're not super dramatic. So you can see we have the villain up here. So if we take a look up there, we can see here is the villain card there. And so he starts on that side there with his token there. And you can see here we have, notice there, this little words, they say elite there. And so you can see these little icons here. These are different things that are going to happen during different phases. Have a little setup information, and then you can see during the travel phase there, you can play the top card of his mission deck. Now if you're playing the elite mode, then you also will consider any of the effects there that say elite on the bottom. Now each of these guys here, you can see here, comes with a mission deck, and usually what you're going to do is you're going to take the starting mission card, and then you're going to play it somewhere. In this case, where they're the most opposition ships. So we're going to take this mission card here, and then you're going to put it where there's the most opposition ships. Well, they're all equal here, so we can kind of choose. So you'll take and kind of look here at the text here. A lot of text on these mission cards. You don't get too many of these out, but sometimes you will. And so you can take, let's just put that here. And usually what's going to happen with these starting mission cards is there'll be something you could try to manipulate so that they don't trigger the big boss from coming into play. And that's pretty much how all of these work. So you're trying to kind of keep that one at bay while you're sort of teching up your ship, keeping the other minion ships from overwhelming you and getting to the point where, okay, now we can trigger this guy to come in and we can fight him. Remember, the way that you win the game is you either clear off all of the minion ships at once, or you kill the boss when he comes in. Now, if you play in elite mode, you have to do both. And the other difference with elite mode is when these ships come into play, you're actually going to add, one extra token on each of these. So all of these should have tokens on them. So this guy has 3 attack and 4 defense. If you're playing elite, it would be 4 and 5. I'm not going to bother setting the tokens up right now, but all of these will have tokens on them. And you do want to put tokens on these, like I said, because a lot of things will kind of change that attribute. So as you can see here, there are different phases through each turn. First, you're going to have a travel phase, requisition, installation, battle, and then aftermath. So simply what travel phase is you're going to be moving your ships around. The ships start on their ship cards themselves, and then they're going to go out to the sectors. And then once you're on a sector, you can requisition, and that's what these cards here on the bottom are. Now there's 5 cards in each of these stacks. Most of the sectors will have 3 stacks of 5 cards. And during the requisition phase, you'll be able to buy those. And then you have the installation phase where you're going to take cards from your hand and be able to install them. So if we zoom in here, there's basically 3 spots that you can install these. So let's take a look at Basilios' deck here. So some of these you can see here will have icons here. So if there's like an attack icon, you're going to take and stick that underneath there, and then you're going to add on an attack power. You actually put that on the card and not on the ship itself. And sometimes you'll get a card that will add defense. And so, for example, when you install this card, you may draw a card. So you can draw another card off your deck when you install that, and you add your 2 defense there. And then some of these are going to be text here that go to the bottom. For example, this card here. When you may scrap a tech card installed on this ship. If you do, this ship gains an attack. So what you can do is install that, and then you can see here this is saying during the battle phase, you can scrap a tech card from somewhere on here to give you a little bonus attack there. So if it doesn't have one of these little numbers here, you're just going to put them along the bottom here, and there'll be different little special abilities. So if you first do requisition, then you'll do installation, then you'll do battle with different ships, and then you'll have sort of an aftermath phase. So what you're going to do for each of these phases here is you're going to have possibly different events. So you can see here, so we'll look at travel phase. Phase action events, requisition phase action events, installation phase action events. So there may be different events on the board here that are going to trigger. So for example, if we just look at the singularity here, he always is going to have a travel event. So play the top card of the mission deck in the sector with the most opposition ships. So if you have multiple effects, let's say we have another card out here like this one, the Alpha Prime. This says for the travel event, move all attack from automatron hunters, and then move all defense from bionic gatherers in this sector to this ship. So this guy is pretty cool. He kind of like sucks up all the energy, and then the boss will actually kind of suck up all the energy off of these once he comes into play. So during the travel phase, this is going to happen. Now thankfully here, we actually have 2 Alpha Primes on the same sector, so that effect's not really going to do anything. So if you have multiple effects in any of these phases, you kind of pick and choose however you want to do it. And if there's like a tie for something, then the players choose. It's very easy. But you can kind of, game it to your advantage, and that's kind of a little bit of the strategy of the game. So very simply, after you resolve any travel events, then you players can move onto different sectors on the board. And all this is going to kind of happen simultaneously. There's no real turns, and I really like that. Because, well, I'll talk about more of that in the review, but I really like how there's no turns. Players can just kind of negotiate, and they'll say, okay, I'm going to go here, you're going to go here. And you're going to be considering what kind of ships you're going to be attacking, what kind of stuff you might want to buy here that's on the top of these decks, and different things. And also maybe what you're going to do to support other players attacking maybe a single kind of big bad ship that's being annoying. So after the travel phase, we go into the requisition phase there, and that's simply buying cards. Now every player is always going to draw 4 cards for the turn, and so what you do is you take a look at the 4 cards you've drawn here, and then you can see here's the money value, and you just kind of generate this money. You don't actually spend the cards, to buy anything. You just, okay, this is how much money I have this turn. So I got 60, $100. So if I was here in the middle, I would zoom in here and take a look at these 3 cards here. So you can see here in the upper right, this is 50, 50, and then this one over here is 10. So that's the price. And when you buy these, you buy them for various different things. So we can buy this one. This will go into our deck. And when you install this tech, you may draw a card, and you can see this will give us 2 attack when we slide it in and install it there. Now when you buy a card, interesting thing about this in a deck building sense is there's no shuffling. You're just going to take stick this card underneath. So you will have here, again, the negative side, but this is kind of the card back. So you go ahead and stick it in there, that's in your deck. So you can buy as much as you can afford. You can, have one guy buy one thing and I'll buy another thing. Again, this is all kind of simultaneously, happening. And certain cards are going to be, better for different guys. So you can see this guy here, he starts off with 5 defense and 0 attack. So that's a lot of defense to start off with. That's very nice, but then you can start teching up his attack and things. And all the different decks and stuff are going to kind of combo off each other. So that's one thing about Sentinels in the Multiverse. I'm kind of getting the review here, but I want to kind of explain this for Sentinels fans. Is, in that game you could kind of like game it by doing certain turn orders. Like you'd have Sub-Zero sit to the left of you and he would be able to play some card or something like that that would help you and give you more attack. So that is like kind of taken out of the gaminess of it, and it just kind of like is the part of the game. So I can have stuff that will like be giving me attack, and then I can do that to give other players attack. So you can kind of like, team up the ships and sort of, work them together in a real kind of teamwork sort of fashion. So again, after you requisition and buy stuff, then you're going to be able to install things and you just kind of play the cards out. And a little bit of that is also kind of managing how much money is going to be in your deck. Because if you just like install everything, or you install something that's going to generate for you, a lot of money, then you're not going to have money to buy something really cool that may come up later. So there's a little bit of management there in terms of keeping your deck full of money, and also not trying to install cards, because as you take damage and you start to remove these tokens, the cards themselves will actually get scrapped out of the game. So some of the cards will go back into your deck after you play them. For example, you've got this boost here, and any boosts that are in your starter deck, well, when you play it, you can see here recycle when played, which basically recycle just means stick under the deck. So you can play those and again, but if you install something and then it gets blown up, then it's not going back in your deck, and you've not only have you lost the tech, you've also kind of lost the money that it could be generating. And then after you've done installations and bought everything, then you're going to go do battle. And one thing to keep in mind is like some of these boosts here, this one says boost installation, so you can only play that during the installation phase. And sometimes it'll say boost and there will be no phase, so you can play it any time. But whenever you play a boost from your starter deck, it's going to go back into your deck. But any boosts that you may acquire, because sometimes you'll get a boost. Here's one here. For example, let's say you bought this. This isn't really a tech you'll install, but it's a boost. But when you play this, it goes into the scrap pile. And you just take any cards that are these station cards and put them into a scrap pile. If any of these decks empty, then you'll shuffle in some more cards there. So you maybe will see the opposite side of the card. I'll explain more of that in a second. After you've teched up and bought stuff, now you're going to choose a guy to fight. So if you look here, we'll go up to here, and there's a couple of different things. So here we've got a guy on the left there with 3-3, and another guy on the left there with a 3-4. And here we can see my ship's got a 2-2, or this should actually be a 3-2. So you're going to have various, different combat abilities, and then you're going to basically pick and choose which ship you're going to engage. So I may directly engage, let's say, my ship here, I'm going to choose to engage him with him, or him with him, and you choose that, and then maybe I engage the other ship with him. And you're going to mark them with these engaged tokens here. And this is very important that you mark which ones you've engaged. So let's say in this case, both these guys are going to fight, each of those guys separately. And you're going to compare the attack and the defense values, and you kind of apply those simultaneously. So for argument's purpose, let's say this guy here, he was engaging him, and then he was a 4-4 on a 3-3. So you apply those values together. Now the 3-3 is not going to do anything, because you take the 3 attack, apply it to the 4 defense of my ship here, and that's going to kind of absorb all that. Now if I'm a 4-4, I'm going to take my 4 attack and apply it to his 3 defense. Now there's a difference of 1. So let's take here and say we have 3 defense and 3 attack on this guy here. So we'll take and show that up close on the camera. So since I'm attacking him with 4 attack, I have 1 more attack than he has defense. So the difference of that, which is 1, is going to remove one of his defenses. So whenever you take damage, or it tells you to remove like a generic energy, here, you can see this here, this will actually tell you to remove a green, which is basically anything, just remove something. Some stuff will tell you to directly move, an attack or something. But if it doesn't tell you, you're always going to remove all the defense first. So if I had like 5 attack, and I remove 2, and then I'm going to start removing these once the defense is gone. Once everything is gone, then that ship is destroyed. Or, in your case, you'll be flipped over and then you'll be grounded. Now if you have to remove damage, you're going to remove the defense first. It's going to come off cards first, and then it'll be coming off the ship, and then it'll do the same thing, like defense and then attack. So if I had this card in here, I'd install that, I would get an extra defensive bump on there. But anything that has these defensive numbers here in red basically tells you that when you scrap this, then you're going to do an effect. So when this tech is scrapped, you may choose to recycle it. So this one actually will stay in your deck. So you'll have another defense value on here. Let's say I took 2 damage, I would take these two, 1, 2. So working from all the cards in, going back to the ship, and then this one again would trigger its effect. And then once all these are gone again, then you start removing all the cards down from here, and then removing your attack power. So that's a very cool, kind of interesting way of doing it. Now I've seen, especially with with vigilance, you can really tech up and get a ton of attack. But if you shy the defense down, you're going to do a lot of damage, but then if you don't have a defense, you're going to absorb all the damage, and so it'll eat through your defense, and then your attack, which you had spent so much time building up, is going to go back down. So that's a really cool, kind of interesting way of doing combat. So if you kill one of these ships here, then you're going to get a bounty. So for example, if you kill this guy, you can hardly see this. It says you get a bounty of an attack. So there's different bounties and things. Some of them will be an ability, like remove some other attributes from other ships in the sector, different things like that. And then you go into the aftermath phase. And so let's say we'd set this up like so, and let's say we blew up those 2 ships, and then we had engaged with this ship here, but we didn't destroy it. So what's going to happen is these ships will be gone, and then nobody fought these 2 ships here on the left. So for every ship that was not engaged, just kind of work your way down, you're going to flip a card. So we're going to flip 1 card here and then flip it over, and here's a little boost. So play the top 2 cards of the opposition ship deck in the sector with the fewest opposition ships. So because we didn't engage this guy, he's going to kind of trigger a bad event. So on this side it's cool tech for us, on the other side it's bad tech for the aliens. So you do that, and then in that case we draw ship cards off of there, and we put it here because there was that, it said where the fewest were. And then you do another one because he was not engaged, and we do whatever. This would actually be a ship, and so the ship would come out here, and then we wouldn't draw any cards here. We wouldn't draw any cards for him since he was engaged. We would just draw 1 card here. So as long as you engage a guy, you're good. So we'll flip that up, and that'll be a boost or a ship or something. Now there is a ship limit here to each sector, basically the number of players plus 2. So in a 3-player game we can have at most 5 ships here. If you draw a ship or something, then that will put you over the limit, then you just scrap it. Now other ships can't actually move there, so like during the travel phase maybe something else moves there and you can have more than 5. But anytime you would play a ship out of these cards or from the ship deck, it'll just get scrapped. Sometimes there'll be effects that'll trigger off that. You don't want that to build up. Now if you ever have in this aftermath phase, let's say in this case we were in the 2nd round and we didn't take care of business over here, we're going to flip 1 for this guy, 1 for this guy, 1 for this guy. So if you ever flip 1 card from all 3, or sometimes less, sometimes there's some of these sectors with 2 station cards, if you ever flip all the cards, this is going to be overrun sector. So this is going to overrun, and then there's going to be some different effect there. And so the overrun sectors will sometimes tie in with missions, or sometimes tie in with the ability of the villain, and things like that. You lose the game if all your ships are grounded, or all 3 sectors here are overrun. So you're going to be kind of bouncing around, keeping in mind all the different abilities, some of the mission effects, some of the effects of the villain, and whether or not it's going to be overrun. You might let a sector get overrun, or you may let a sector have some attacks go through. So if there's only 1 guy here, and this one hadn't been overrun yet, you know what, we're just going to let him attack, and we're going to trigger some bad event. Hopefully it's not too bad, but meanwhile we've got a lot more ships over here piling up. We can't afford to let it get overrun, things like that. Now the last thing I think I'm forgetting here is the secondary thing. So you can actually team up. So if there was only like 1 ship here in that sector, what you can do is you have 1 ship will engage, and he'll apply his attack and his defense and all that good stuff, and then the other ship can be marked as a secondary engager. So you may move 1 ship in this sector to another sector if you're the secondary engager. Now if you move over here to this guy, he has a thing here. So the primary engager gains a temporary bump of 2 defense. So if you're the secondary engager, you can kind of help out take down a super bad ship. And then you just kind of go through the next round, do a little bit of cleanup, and then you go back into the travel phase, activate all the travel events, decide where you want to move your ships to buy and attack. And there are different abilities. So this is like a special ability smorgasbord, or like a special effect salad or something. So let me just jump into the review and tell you what I think. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the overview. I think if you're a fan of Sentinels of the Multiverse, you're going to love this game. Now for me, I like the gameplay of this better. The theme not so much, because I'm a huge comic book fan and there's not enough good comic book games out. But I still like the theme. It's cool. It's kind of, saving the galaxy, defending everybody from, this crazy invading horde of aliens and stuff like that. I really like the theme. But the gameplay to me is much better in this for sure. They have some similarities, like, you got to trigger all the different events based on the different phase. There's not a ton of that, but there's not a minimal amount of that either. And that's going to be something that you're going to get used to, as you play like a certain type of ship or play against a certain villain a couple of times. You're going to get used to what they're going to do and what's going to happen. So there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve the first time you use a ship or the first time you play against a villain, kind of absorbing all the different effects and things. But you're going to get used to it. And the other thing you're going to have to get used to with this game is sort of the chaos tenseness of the game, because sometimes the game will just dunk you in the tank right in turn one. You're like, oh my gosh, we are going to lose on the first turn. Now, the first time we played, we actually lost on the third turn, but this first time we played too. But then now we've played it a few more times and actually won finally. You got to kind of get used to being under pressure and being, that's what's really cool about this. And Sentinels did it, but I feel like this may do it better, where it's kind of like, oh my gosh, we're overwhelmed, we're going to lose this sector, this is going to, it's like, it feels like all this stuff is happening. And it's in a way that other co-ops don't really do it, where you feel like you're being overwhelmed. It just feels like, okay, this is a pain point, this is a pressure point, we've got to do this or we're going to lose the game. This one is just like, it feels like the whole board is against you. It's not difficult to explain, but it feels more like I'm being overwhelmed by the entire game than like, okay, if we draw a card here, we're screwed. It doesn't feel like that. And a lot of co-ops, and it's the whole pandemic thing, but a lot of co-ops kind of do that, where they're like, oh, okay, we're going along, and if we get another cube here, or we have another fire breakout here, or whatever, then we lose. So we have focus spots, but this feels like you're just getting clubbed from left and right. So you got to get used to that. And then you got to feel like you can still play under that pressure, because in the game that we particularly won, I thought we were done again. I was like, man, are we ever going to win this game? But then we were able to play a nice card and sort of stave off a little bit here and start dealing, and then 2 more turns in, we had the win. So it has that right out the gate, and I feel like, again, Sentinels kind of had that, but this has that, right out the gate. I don't know how to tell you that. You really got to kind of experience it for yourself, I think. So the other thing is cool is managing your money, and the deck of cards for each player ship is cool, because you don't want to spend too much and put too much tech out. You got to be smart about the tech. Buying the right tech for your ship to kind of counterbalance or balance your ship to kind of focus on more attack or even it out or different things like that. Some of the boosts that you can get from the stations are powerful, but again, those are one shot. So you got to pick the right time to play those. So yeah, it's really cool. I mean, from a experience kind of thing, it's very neat. There's a lot of special abilities to take in. So especially when you have, I haven't played it with 6, but if you had a lot of players like that, it's going to be crazy. All the effects and everything like that, and all the stat tracking. Now, thankfully, we have the tokens. It's a piece of cake to track all the stats, but that's a lot of stuff to kind of take in. So I don't know that I ever want to play it with 6, to be honest with you. I think 4 is probably the most. The nice thing is I have played it with 2, and it does actually work with 2 with just 2 players. You don't have to, like dummy pilot a 3rd player or 4th player. Like in Sentinels, I felt you really had to do that. In this one, 2 does work, and it feels like balanced just like a 3 and 4 player game do. So, that's pretty cool, and I think they really kind of learned from that from Sentinels. But I didn't think that was a problem with Sentinels. I mean, I don't mind playing like, okay, we'll share and play this guy, no big deal. But yeah, so it's a really fun game, and it has a lot of text and a lot of stat tracking stuff, but it feels really cool to burn through your deck on some of the guys, and it feels very much like Sentinels that way. Each ship has got its own thing, each villain's got its own thing, and so it has that definite thing. So if you like Sentinels, I think you'll love this, as long as you like the theme. The one thing I just wish, man, is I wish the art was more prevalent on the cards, because I'm looking, this is great art. I wish it was bigger, you know, and the font was bigger or something. That's the only thing, like, really real knock against the game is that. But, you know, other than that, the little pieces are cool, and, you know, the art on the big cards is really nice. So I wish that was just highlighted more, because I feel like that's just, it's too small. It's because it's so good. You look at it, I'm like, that looks cool. You know, I wish it was bigger. But whatever. I mean, the cards, you know, they do what they do. So anyway, this is a game I think if you're a Sentinels person, you really should try it and, you know, take a look at it. And it's very fun, very just cool dynamics, and how each turn is kind of a puzzle where you're like, okay, now let's take a break. And so there's a little bit of slog there, but I don't mind that, because we're really trying to figure out and then execute all together, because you don't have turns, which is really cool. And I really like that. So it's very much a negotiation kind of thing, you know, for as far as what you can do. Now you can have a little bit of player domination as far as, you know, the leader kind of telling everybody what to do, you know, but I don't know. I mean, to me that's part of the co-op. This is everybody's doing it together, and if you have a guy that's a jerk about it, you know, well then don't play with that person. But I like the teamwork part of this, you know, and I feel like people are going to say, oh, it's open to the leader abuse problem. You know, I'm just thinking of this actually now off the top of my head. I didn't have that experience with it, but I'm like thinking, oh yeah, you know what, this probably would be open to that. But what I like about that on the other side is that you have the teamwork aspect where everybody can communicate, you know, and everybody can you can kind of sit back and be quiet about it and say, okay, cool, I agree with everybody. But as long as it's engaging in a way that I think it doesn't matter. And to me, that's a player problem. That's not a game problem at all. And I hear that a lot. Oh, it's open to the leader problem. Well, who are you playing with? I mean, give me a break. You know, and if somebody doesn't want you to be at the table with them, even if you're a new player and you're helping them, but you're so concerned about winning this board game that you don't let them make decisions for themselves. I mean, what the heck? I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me, and I'm sorry. I know it makes no sense. It almost makes me angry in a way. I can see people saying that about this game too, so I'm sorry for the tangent here, but to me it's a teamwork game, and that's something that a lot of co-ops don't have. Is there's no, like, I feel like my guy is helping your guy, and that happens here quite a bit. So if you think the leader problem is going to be a problem for you, well then don't get the game or kick that jerk out of your group. But I think this is going to be I think this will be good for you. If you have a nice group, everybody's friendly with each other, and then you can kind of, you know, banter back and forth and figure out how to do everything simultaneously. I really like that they removed the turns. I wish more games did that. You know, that's really the kind of the cool part of this game, is removing the turns. Now I've talked way too long, and I'm sorry about that, but that just occurred to me. I was like, oh, you know what, Joel, you probably missed the fact that you can have a bashing leader with this. And not a bashing leader, but anyway, so I'm sorry I went long, but anyway, so take a look at it, Galactic Strike Force. Thanks.